Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be back and to see you all again. It's been an amazing journey so far, and I can't wait to dive into today's topic with all of you. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment below to share your thoughts, and of course, subscribe to help support the channel. Your engagement means the world to me, and it really helps the channel grow. Let's make this community even bigger. Let's get started. Welcome to the beginning of Manhattan's incredible journey through time, where the island was more than just a place. It was a canvas, waiting to be transformed. The year is the early 1800s, a time when Manhattan was still a bustling hub of growth, yet the skyline that we know today was still a distant dream. Picture the scene. Narrow dirt roads stretching along the waterfront, wooden storefronts lining the streets, and horse-drawn carts trotting across the cobblestones. Manhattan's architecture wasn't defined by steel and glass, but by brick, timber, and the steady rise of small buildings. It was a city full of promise and potential. Yet, at this point in history, it was far from the towering skyline that we know today. In this early era, the horizon wasn't dotted with the monumental skyscrapers that would come to dominate the skyline later. Instead, Manhattan's tallest structures were church steeples, with Trinity Church standing proudly among them. Completed in 1846, Trinity's spire soared to 280 feet, making it the tallest building in New York at the time. However, even this was more of a symbol than a part of a growing skyline. The buildings that lined the city's streets were often no taller than 5 or 6 stories, built from brick or timber, creating a landscape that stretched out horizontally rather than upward. But what's truly fascinating about this period is the way the city began to grow. Not just in population, but in ambition. Manhattan was slowly but surely expanding. The heart of this transformation lay in the southern tip of the island, where commerce and culture were flourishing at a rapid pace. The harbor, the lifeblood of Manhattan, bustled with trade, and the population was swelling with immigrants eager to make their mark in the new world. Still, this expansion was grounded, literally and figuratively, by the limitations of gravity and the building materials available. In 1811, something bold and visionary took shape. The city planners decided that Manhattan needed a plan, a structure that would guide its growth and help it become the city that would eventually dominate the world. The Commissioner's Plan of 1811 laid out the famous grid system that would define the city's layout. It was ambitious, practical, and designed to accommodate the growing population. The streets would stretch from one end of the island to the other in neat, orderly rows, facilitating commerce and transportation. The grid not only allowed for efficient growth, but also provided the framework that would later enable the city to soar vertically. Beneath this grid, though, was a secret weapon that most of the early settlers couldn't have known would eventually play such a pivotal role in the city's future. Deep under the island, the bedrock, the hard, dense granite, lay waiting, ready to support some of the tallest structures in human history. Manhattan's bedrock wasn't just a foundation for buildings. It would eventually become a symbol of the island's power, providing the necessary stability for towering skyscrapers that would one day change the skyline forever. Even as the city began to grow outward and become a hub for commerce and culture, Manhattan's early skyline wasn't defined by towering structures. Instead, it was defined by human ambition. It was defined by the promise of what was to come. The early skyline didn't stretch into the sky. It stretched along the ground, adapting to the limitations of the time. Buildings that were a few stories tall were constructed with thick stone walls, requiring massive foundations to support them. It was a time when rising higher was impractical, expensive, and often impossible. But despite these limitations, the ambition to go upward was already present. The vision for a towering city wasn't born in the mid-1900s or the early 20th century. It started to take shape long before with this quiet yet powerful realization. Manhattan was meant to rise. As the years passed, Manhattan's character began to change in more subtle ways. While there were no towering skyscrapers yet, the city's population was growing rapidly. More and more people came to the island in search of opportunity. The port was a constant source of commerce, and the island's streets were constantly alive with activity. The 1800s were a period of change. and New York was becoming the epicenter of trade and culture, where ideas from all over the world collided and flourished. Though the skyline was still low, there were hints of what was to come. The skyline didn't consist of just buildings. It was a mixture of culture, industry, and the pulse of a rapidly growing city. The foundations of Manhattan's great architectural legacy were being laid, even if they weren't visible in the form of towering skyscrapers just yet. One thing that stands out during this period was the sheer practicality of life in Manhattan. There were no grand structures to look up to at this point, and what was built had to serve a specific purpose. Much of the city was focused on its economy, the industries that powered the city, and the cultural life that defined it. Buildings were modest, often no taller than 5 or 6 stories, designed not for their iconic architecture, but for their functionality. However, behind the practicality in everyday life was a quiet ambition, an ambition that, when combined with technological advancements and a booming economy, would eventually burst open the doors of the future and lead to the vertical city that we see today. While Manhattan's skyline was just beginning to emerge from the murk of its early years, the seeds of a towering metropolis were being sown deep in the island's foundation. By the mid-19th century, technology would start to change everything. First came the elevator. In 1852, Alicia Otis unveiled the safety elevator, a device that could safely carry people up to higher floors. Imagine that moment for a second. Standing on a platform high above a crowd, Otis ordered the rope to be cut, and yet the platform didn't fall. With that single, breathtaking demonstration, the rules of height and architecture were rewritten. Suddenly, the upper floors of buildings weren't just the cheapest, they were the most desirable. But technology didn't stop with the elevator. The next breakthrough came in the form of the steel skeleton, developed in the 1880s and 1890s. This innovation allowed buildings to be taller, thinner, and more flexible. Instead of relying on thick, load-bearing walls, engineers could build skyscrapers that used steel frames to support their weight. This made it possible to build vertically without the risk of collapsing. It was a technology that opened the floodgates for Manhattan to begin its vertical expansion. The city was on the brink of a monumental shift. In the 1890s, the first true skyscrapers began to appear. These buildings were tall and thin, made possible by the combined advancements of steel skeletons and elevators. The New York World Building was the first to stand as a symbol of Manhattan's growing vertical ambition. At 20 stories, it was a statement, albeit a modest one, about what was possible. But that was just the beginning. The skyscraper race had officially begun, and by the turn of the 20th century, more ambitious towers followed. The Park Row building was completed in 1899, standing at 391 feet. Then came the Singer building in 1908, which reached 612 feet, making it the tallest building in the world at the time. Every new skyscraper was a declaration of progress, and with each towering structure, Manhattan's skyline began to take shape, reaching toward the sky and forever changing the city's silhouette. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about this period wasn't just the emergence of these tall buildings. It was the promise they represented. The skyline of Manhattan was no longer just a backdrop to the everyday life of the city. It was becoming a statement of what was possible, what could be built, and what the city could become. As the 1800s came to a close, the skyline had begun to stretch upward. The promise of Manhattan as a vertical city was beginning to take shape. It wasn't just about buildings anymore. It was about identity. The city was changing, and soon it would rise higher than anyone had ever imagined. And as the 20th century beckoned, Manhattan would find itself at the forefront of an architectural revolution, where the ambition of the island's founders would manifest itself in ways they could never have imagined. But it all began here, with that early dream, the quiet ambition that would eventually reshape the world. From a modest grid to a towering skyline, Manhattan had become a symbol of ambition, progress, and the belief that the sky was the limit. Or rather, it would soon become a place where the sky itself was only the beginning. At the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries, New York began a remarkable transformation, ushering in a new era of towering skyscrapers that would forever alter its skyline. This period wasn't just about buildings growing taller, it was about reshaping the city's identity, driven by both technological innovation and boundless ambition. The rise of the skyscraper in New York wasn't just an architectural achievement, it was the embodiment of American prosperity, power, and progress. The catalyst for this vertical revolution came in 1852 with the invention of the safety elevator by Elisha Otis. Until then, buildings were restricted to a few stories, as there was no safe way to transport people higher than that. Otis' breakthrough demonstrated dramatically when he stood atop a platform at the New York Crystal Palace and had the rope cut, allowed the elevator to remain suspended. This innovation made skyscrapers a practical reality, opening the door for buildings to soar higher than ever before. But the elevator alone wasn't enough. To build skyscrapers, engineers needed stronger, lighter materials, and this is where steel came in. In the late 19th century, the rapid industrialization of steel production provided the material needed to construct buildings that could defy gravity. Steel frames allowed for the creation of tall structures with thin outer walls, which previously hadn't been possible. This development led to the first true skyscrapers, such as the New York World Building, 1890, the Park Row Building, 1899, and the Singer Building, 1908. These buildings were not only tall, but also represented a shift in the city's approach to design and construction. The construction of the Woolworth Building in 1913 marked another significant milestone. Designed by architect Cass Gilbert, the Woolworth Building became the tallest building in the world at the time, standing at 792 feet. It was not only a monumental engineering feat, but it also symbolized the rise of American capitalism, earning it the nickname Cathedral of Commerce. The Woolworth Building's design and scale conveyed the strength of America's emerging global influence. It was a triumph of both form and function, setting the stage for even greater architectural achievements in the coming decades. As the 1920s roared on, New York's skyline continued to evolve. The emergence of the Art Deco style marked a new era of skyscraper design. The Chrysler Building, completed in 1930, was perhaps the most dazzling of all. At 1,046 feet, it briefly became the tallest building in the world, overtaking the previous record holder, the Woolworth Building. The Chrysler Building's design was an engineering marvel, with its stainless steel spire being assembled in secret overnight. Its sleek geometric curves, machine-age detailing, and iconic eagle motifs made it a symbol of New York's future-forward mindset. Yet, as magnificent as the Chrysler Building was, it didn't hold the crown for long. The Empire State Building, completed in 1931, surpassed it in height, standing at 1,250 feet and becoming the tallest building in the world, a title it would hold for nearly 40 years. Built during the Great Depression, the Empire State Building was a symbol of hope and resilience. Constructed in just 13 months with an army of workers, many of whom were immigrants, it stood as a testament to the American spirit of perseverance in the face of adversity. The Empire State Building was more than just a skyscraper. It was a message. It was a declaration that New York and America would rise above the challenges of the time. It was also an embodiment of the era's aesthetic, elegant, ambitious, and forward-thinking. Its completion during the Great Depression resonated deeply, offering a beacon of progress when the country was struggling. As the tallest building in the world, the Empire State Building was a global symbol of American resilience, its Art Deco design radiating optimism and modernity. But this wasn't just a race for height. Each of these skyscrapers represented a battle for dominance, whether economic, political, or cultural. The World War I era had witnessed the rapid rise of industry, and skyscrapers became the physical manifestation of that industrial power. The construction of these buildings was not just about looking impressive. It was about making a statement that the United States was an emerging global superpower. New York was no longer just a city. It was the heart of the world's financial and cultural future, and its skyscrapers stood as towering representations of that influence. While the skyscrapers were architectural feats, they were also symbolic of a cultural shift. The early skyscrapers in New York were not simply about height, but about the advancement of the city into the future. The industrial age was transforming society, and these monumental buildings reflected that transformation. Architects, engineers, and builders alike embraced the idea of reaching for the sky, to make New York not just a place where people lived and worked, but a symbol of progress, ambition, and the pursuit of greatness. By the 1930s, Manhattan was fully entrenched in the skyscraper era. The city was not just expanding horizontally, but growing vertically. Each new structure a new opportunity to show the world that New York was not only keeping pace with modernity, it was setting the pace. The skyline became a canvas on which the city's boldest dreams were painted in steel, glass, and concrete. While the Depression slowed construction, the legacy of these early skyscrapers remained. These towering buildings were not simply structures, they were aspirations, a vision of the future embedded into the city's very fabric. With their sharp lines and soaring heights, these skyscrapers symbolized a city that, despite its challenges, was determined to rise above them all. In the decades that followed, the skyscraper race in New York City would continue, but the early buildings of the 20th century would remain the foundation upon which the city's iconic skyline was built. Today, the Empire State Building, the Chrysler Building, and the Woolworth Building continue to stand as symbols of that era, monuments to the dreamers, engineers, and architects who dared to build not just for the present, but for the future. The rise of skyscrapers in New York wasn't just about pushing the limits of engineering, it was about expressing the spirit of the city itself. It was about creating a skyline that would forever symbolize American ambition and ingenuity. And as the city continues to evolve, the lessons of these early skyscrapers of vision, persistence, and daring remain as relevant as ever. Each new building that rose higher than the last was a metaphor for the city's constant push to redefine itself, to grow, to thrive. Manhattan's skyline was more than a collection of steel and glass. It was a testament to what human beings could achieve when they dared to dream big and to build higher, faster, and stronger than ever before. As New York's skyline continued to evolve, it would never forget the lessons of the past. The skyscrapers that started it all, the ambitious architects, and the relentless spirit of the city. And in this way, New York's skyline continues to stand tall as a beacon to the future, a reminder that no matter how high we climb, the sky has never been the limit. It's just the next floor. The World Trade Center was not merely a set of buildings, but a symbol of America's rise as a global economic powerhouse. In the heart of New York's financial district, these twin towers stood not only as architectural marvels, but as the embodiment of the nation's ambition, modernity, and optimism. The story of the World Trade Center's creation, its impact on the skyline, and the devastation it endured on September 11, 2001 is a testament to the city's resilience and its ability to rebuild, innovate, and never lose sight of its future. The birth of the World Trade Center can be traced back to the post-World War II era. In the 1950s, the world was recovering from the devastation of the war, and America was emerging as the leader of the free world. With the rise of the global economy, New York City's role as the financial capital of the world became even more entrenched. In the midst of this new era of economic expansion, the city found itself in need of a modern complex that could showcase America's power and reach. It was during this time, in 1960, that the idea of the World Trade Center was first conceived. David Rockefeller, the chairman of Chase Manhattan Bank, had long been frustrated by the lack of office space in Manhattan. As New York's economy boomed, the demand for real estate was at an all-time high. Meanwhile, the city was dealing with the challenge of finding space to accommodate the growing need for commercial property. Rockefeller's vision was not just about filling office space, but about creating something monumental. He wanted a complex that would redefine the city's skyline and symbolize the strength of the American economy. Rockefeller was also keenly aware of New York's history, and he understood that the city had always been built from the ground up. He saw the World Trade Center as a way to take that history and build it upward, literally reaching for the sky. The vision became a reality when the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey agreed to take on the massive project. The plan was to build a complex that would consist of 2 towers, each over 1,300 feet tall and a series of lower-rise buildings surrounding them. The towers were to be the centerpiece of the World Trade Center complex, and the sheer scale of the project was unprecedented. At the time, there was no other building in the world that rivaled the World Trade Center in terms of height or ambition. The Port Authority hired architect Minoru Yamasaki to bring the vision to life. Yamasaki's design for the towers was both modern and minimalist. The Twin Towers would feature a sleek, uniform design with no decorative elements, just clean, sharp lines. The buildings would rise straight up into the sky with a simple, bold form. The towers' facades would be covered in aluminum and glass, giving them a shiny, futuristic appearance. Yamasaki's design was a departure from the ornate, grandiose buildings of the past. The World Trade Center was to be a symbol of the future, clean, modern, and utilitarian. Groundbreaking for the World Trade Center began in 1966, and the project was expected to take about 7 years to complete. The construction of the World Trade Center was a massive undertaking, and it involved thousands of workers. For many, it was an opportunity to be part of something truly transformative. The construction process itself was groundbreaking. Engineers used cutting-edge techniques to create the foundations, including the use of a slurry wall to prevent the Hudson River from flooding the site. The towers were built using a steel frame construction technique, which allowed for the creation of extremely tall buildings without the need for massive load-bearing walls. The World Trade Center was not just a feat of architectural design, but of engineering innovation. As the towers began to take shape, it became clear that they were going to be something unlike anything the city or the world had ever seen. At the time, the tallest building in the world was the Empire State Building, standing at 1,250 feet tall. When the World Trade Center's first tower was completed in 1970, it reached a height of 1,368 feet, surpassing the Empire State Building. When both towers were completed in 1973, they stood at a staggering height of 1,368 feet and 1,362 feet, respectively, making them the tallest buildings in the world at that time. The towers became an instant symbol of New York's dominance in the global economy. They were the perfect metaphor for the city itself: bold, powerful, and unapologetic. But the World Trade Center was more than just an economic powerhouse. It was a hub for business and culture. The complex housed offices for thousands of companies from around the world, and it became a center for international trade, banking, and finance. The World Trade Center's observation deck offered panoramic views of the city, and the building's plaza hosted concerts, public events, and exhibitions. In the 1980s and early 1990s, the World Trade Center became an international symbol of American prosperity and strength. It was a place where people from all walks of life came to work, to explore, and to take in the sights of New York. The towers became a part of the city's fabric, as much a part of New York's identity as the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty. The towers were also featured in countless films, television shows, and advertisements, further cementing their place in pop culture. But despite its success and grandeur, the World Trade Center was not without its controversies. The towers had been criticized for their design, with some critics calling them too sterile, too boxy, and too disconnected from the surrounding urban environment. Others lamented the loss of the city's historical architecture, as the World Trade Center complex had displaced a large swath of older, more charming buildings in the area. In the 1990s, the World Trade Center complex faced its first major crisis. In 1993, a terrorist attack orchestrated by Islamist extremists took place in the parking garage beneath the North Tower. A truck bomb was detonated, killing 6 people and injuring more than 1,000. While the bombing didn't destroy the towers, it left a lasting impact on the complex. Security was increased, and both towers were retrofitted with additional safety features, including reinforced columns and new fireproofing materials. The attack had made one thing clear: the World Trade Center was a potential target for further violence, and its symbolic importance made it a prime target for those who sought to strike at the heart of America's power. Yet, the towers remained a beacon of American resilience. Despite the bombing, the World Trade Center continued to operate, hosting businesses from around the world and standing tall as a symbol of New York's indomitable spirit. But in the shadow of the bombing, a sense of vulnerability had crept into the city's collective consciousness. The towers, once viewed as impenetrable, were now seen as vulnerable to the very forces they had once symbolized strength against. On the morning of September 11, 2001, that vulnerability would be tragically exposed. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Just 17 minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 struck the South Tower. The images of the two planes slamming into the towers would be forever etched in the memory of millions, both in the United States and around the world. Within hours, the world watched in horror as the Twin Towers collapsed in a cloud of smoke and debris. The collapse of the towers was not just an assault on New York or on America. It was an assault on symbols of power, ambition, and global dominance. The World Trade Center had come to represent the very ideals of American capitalism, modernity, and freedom. As the towers fell, so did the sense of invincibility that had surrounded them. The city and the world were shaken to their core. The aftermath of the attacks was a time of grief, shock, and disbelief. Thousands of lives were lost, and the skyline of Manhattan, which had once been defined by the towering presence of the Twin Towers, was forever changed. But New York City, like its skyline, was not broken. In the days and weeks that followed, the city began the painful process of mourning, recovering, and rebuilding. The destruction of the World Trade Center complex also sparked a global conversation about security, terrorism, and the future of urban spaces. The attacks had shown the world how vulnerable even the most iconic structures could be to forces of violence and hatred. In the aftermath of 9/11, there was a renewed sense of urgency to create safer, more resilient buildings and to rethink the way cities were designed to protect their citizens from future threats. But even in the face of such overwhelming tragedy, New York began to rebuild. The site of the World Trade Center, known as Ground Zero, became a symbol of the city's resilience. In the years that followed, plans were made to rebuild the towers and create a new World Trade Center complex, one that would honor the memory of those lost while embracing the future. In 2003, architect Daniel Lebskin's design for the new World Trade Center was selected, and the construction of One World Trade Center, originally called the Freedom Tower, began in 2006. The new tower, which would rise to 1,776 feet, symbolizing the year of America's independence, was designed not just as a building, but as a memorial to those who had perished in the attacks. Construction of the tower continued through the 2000s, and in 2014, One World Trade Center officially opened its doors. The World Trade Center's impact wasn't just physical. It was cultural, psychological, and political. The attacks changed the way the world viewed New York City, the United States, and the global balance of power. But it also changed the way people thought about buildings and the meaning they hold. The collapse of the Twin Towers was not just the fall of two massive structures. It was the collapse of an idea, a symbol of American supremacy, and a turning point in history. Despite the loss, New York's skyline and the city itself rose again. The rebuilding of the World Trade Center was a statement that, even in the face of terror and tragedy, the spirit of the city and the nation would never be broken. Today, the World Trade Center complex stands as a symbol of remembrance, resilience, and hope for a better future. The towers may be gone, but their memory lives on, etched into the history of New York and the world. Rebuilding and transformation after the tragic events of September 11, 2001, marked not just a period of reconstruction, but also of emotional, cultural, and architectural rebirth. The skyline of New York City, a visual representation of the city's resilience and ambition, had been irreversibly altered when the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center fell. In the immediate aftermath of the attacks, the question of what should replace the destroyed buildings loomed large. What would rise in the place of such an iconic symbol of American economic power? How could a city, shaken to its core, rebuild not just its physical structures, but also its identity? The journey from Ground Zero, the site where the Twin Towers once stood, to the revitalization of the area was marked by a long, complicated process. The emotional weight of the site, along with political, logistical, and financial hurdles, made the task of rebuilding not just an architectural challenge, but a moral and symbolic one. The question wasn't just about how to restore the skyline. It was about how to honor the memory of those who perished, while creating a future that represented the strength, hope, and resilience of the American people. In the immediate aftermath of the collapse, Lower Manhattan became a site of grief and reflection, but it also became a place of recovery. First responders, volunteers, and workers from around the nation poured into the area to assist in the recovery efforts. While the work was physically grueling and emotionally taxing, it was also a testament to the spirit of New York City. The city refused to be broken. This was the beginning of what would be a years-long process of rebuilding, which would involve not just the creation of new buildings, but also the healing of a city that had been deeply wounded. In the months following the attacks, discussions about the future of Ground Zero began. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which owned the land, and the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation, LMDC, spearheaded the process of planning for the new World Trade Center site. The idea was to create a development that would not only replace the lost towers, but also serve as a symbol of America's recovery and strength. But the question remained, what should go in their place? How could the new World Trade Center reflect the emotional, cultural, and architectural history of the site while also marking a new chapter for New York City? The first major hurdle came in 2002, when a design competition was held to determine the architectural vision for the new World Trade Center complex. The competition attracted a wide range of proposals, some of which focused on rebuilding the Twin Towers exactly as they were, while others aimed to create something entirely new. The designs submitted varied widely in style, size, and concept. There were proposals for skyscrapers that would stretch even higher into the sky than the original towers, and there were more symbolic designs that emphasized open space and memorialization. The competition was intense, and the outcome would shape the future of the site for years to come. The winning design, submitted by architect Daniel Libeskind, was a striking and symbolic vision. His design, titled Memory Foundations, included a series of interconnected structures that would honor the memory of the fallen while also looking toward the future. At the center of the design was the Freedom Tower, which would rise to a height of 1,776 feet, the same number as the year of America's independence. The symbolism of the height was not lost on anyone. The Freedom Tower would not just be the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, but also a symbol of defiance and hope in the face of tragedy. Libeskind's design also included the idea of creating an open space at the site, a memorial to those lost on 9/11. This would become the heart of the new development, a place of reflection, mourning, and remembrance. The design included a memorial plaza, 2 reflecting pools where the original foundations of the Twin Towers had stood, and a museum dedicated to preserving the memory of those who died. The surrounding structures would be designed to fit harmoniously with the memorial, ensuring that the site would not just be a place for business, but a place to remember, reflect, and honor the lives lost. In the early years after the design competition, the planning and construction process was mired in controversy. There were disagreements about the architectural vision for the site, the allocation of space for memorials and commercial buildings, and the pace of construction. Many families of 9/11 victims expressed concerns that the rebuilding process was not being handled with the respect and care that the site deserved. Some felt that too much emphasis was being placed on commercial development, while others were concerned that the memorial was not receiving enough attention. One of the biggest challenges was balancing the memorial aspect with the need to create a thriving, functioning commercial district. The site, after all, was not just a space for remembrance. It was also a crucial piece of New York City's economy. For the city to truly recover, the area needed to attract new businesses, jobs, and investment. But doing so in a way that did not overshadow the memorial was a delicate task. The Port Authority, LMDC, and the City of New York worked tirelessly to ensure that the final design would respect the memory of the victims while creating a space that was economically vibrant and architecturally meaningful. The construction process was another major hurdle. In the wake of 9/11, the world watched as New York City set out to rebuild its skyline, and the challenges were monumental. The site was deeply contaminated with debris, chemicals, and dust, which made the cleanup process time-consuming and difficult. The economic downturn of the early 2000s also delayed progress, and there were questions about how to finance such a large-scale project. But despite the setbacks, construction gradually began to take shape. One World Trade Center, the centerpiece of the new complex, started its construction in 2006, with work on the Memorial Plaza and Museum beginning soon after. The rebuilding process was slow, with a number of delays due to financial, political, and logistical challenges. The memorial, designed by architect Michael Arad, began to take shape in the early 2010s, and the construction of the new towers continued in parallel. As the years went on, the resilience of New Yorkers, the dedication of the construction workers, and the support of the broader community helped bring the vision of the new World Trade Center closer to reality. In 2011, a significant milestone was reached when the 9/11 Memorial Plaza opened to the public. The memorial featured two massive reflecting pools set within the footprints of the original towers, surrounded by a plaza with more than 400 white oak trees. The pools, with their cascading waterfalls, created a somber and peaceful atmosphere. The names of the victims of the attacks were etched into bronze panels surrounding the pools, creating a place of reverence and reflection. For many families of the victims, the memorial provided a place to mourn and honor their loved ones, while for the city and the world, it symbolized the resilience of New York City in the face of unimaginable loss. The opening of One World Trade Center in 2014 marked the completion of the first phase of the redevelopment project. The tower, designed by architect David Childs, stood as a bold symbol of New York's recovery. It was the tallest building in the United States and represented not just architectural achievement, but also the city's unwavering determination to rise again. The building's sleek, modern design, combined with its symbolic height, made it a fitting tribute to the city's strength, both in the face of tragedy and as a global economic leader. The completion of One World Trade Center was a moment of immense pride for New Yorkers and Americans alike. It represented the culmination of years of planning, hard work, and dedication. The new World Trade Center complex was not just a place to do business. It was a symbol of resilience, of hope, and of the unbreakable spirit of the American people. The site had gone from a symbol of loss and devastation to one of renewal and regeneration. Today, the World Trade Center site is a place where people come to work, to remember, and to reflect. The new complex includes office buildings, retail spaces, and cultural institutions. The National September 11 Memorial Museum, which opened in 2014, offers visitors a chance to learn about the events of 9/11, the impact of the attacks, and the stories of the victims. The museum, which is located beneath the Memorial Plaza, contains artifacts from the attacks, personal stories of those who perished, and exhibits about the recovery and rebuilding efforts. The museum is a place where the past, present, and future converge, reminding visitors of the importance of remembering history while looking forward to a brighter future. The transformation of Ground Zero into the new World Trade Center complex is a story of triumph over tragedy, of resilience in the face of loss, and of a city's determination to rebuild itself after one of the most devastating events in its history. The story of the World Trade Center's reconstruction is not just about architecture or design. It's about healing, memory, and the unwavering spirit of New York City. The modern Manhattan skyline, as we know it today, is the culmination of centuries of architectural evolution, ambition, and innovation. The transformation of New York's skyline is not just about the physical structures that rise above the island, but also about how those structures reflect the city's identity, its spirit, and its ever-evolving place in the world. From the humble beginnings of Manhattan's early skyline, where the tallest structures were churches and spires, to the towering giants of the 21st century, the Manhattan skyline tells the story of New York itself, an evolving city that embodies ambition, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of the future. In the years following the completion of iconic buildings like the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building, New York's skyline became a canvas on which the city's ambitions were written in steel and glass. The skyline evolved throughout the 20th century, reflecting the changing moods, technologies, and values of the city and its people. But perhaps no decade was more transformative than the 1990s and 2000s, as New York entered the new millennium. With new advancements in building technology, changes in the city's economic landscape, and the city's recovery from the devastation of 9/11, the modern skyline we see today began to take shape. Manhattan's modern skyline is not a monolith, but a collection of individual statements, each building contributing to the overall identity of the city. These structures reflect not just the technological achievements of their time, but also the cultural, economic, and social movements that shape their design. Whether it's the sleek glass facades of the financial district, the artistic flourishes of the West Side, or the towering residential buildings of Billionaires Row, each new addition to the skyline tells a unique story of New York's place in the world. At the heart of this transformation lies the shift from office buildings and commercial spaces to a more mixed-use development model. In the past, the majority of Manhattan skyscrapers were built with commercial purposes in mind. Businesses needed office space to house their ever-growing operations. But as the city continued to evolve, so did the needs of its residents. The modern skyline now includes a growing number of residential towers, creating a skyline that is as much about living as it is about working. The need for luxury residential buildings has transformed parts of the city, particularly in Midtown and along the West Side, where super tall skyscrapers with record-breaking height and price tags have risen to house the city's wealthiest residents. One of the most remarkable features of Manhattan's modern skyline is the ongoing vertical growth of the city. Manhattan's geography, with its limited land space and high demand for real estate, has led to the rise of taller and taller buildings. The race for height has become a key characteristic of the modern skyline. While many cities around the world have seen their skylines become dominated by one or two monumental structures, Manhattan's skyline is a collective creation, a patchwork of different heights, shapes, and uses. The ambition of architects and developers has led to the construction of some of the tallest and most impressive buildings in the world. Take, for example, the skyscrapers that line the newly developed stretch of Midtown Manhattan known as Billionaires Row. Buildings like 432 Park Avenue, Central Park Tower, and 111 West 57th Street now dominate the skyline, rising above their surroundings like needles piercing the air. These super tall, slim-profiled towers have become the symbol of New York's growing wealth inequality. Built for the ultra-rich, these towers represent not just a physical transformation of the city, but also a cultural one. The towers themselves are architectural marvels, sleek, glass-walled skyscrapers that break the traditional mold of urban design. They are modern, minimalistic, and clean, a stark contrast to the more ornate Art Deco and Beaux-Arts structures that characterize much of New York's older skyline. These skyscrapers, often dubbed super talls, are not just an architectural trend, they are a direct response to the city's increasing demand for luxury housing. The rise of these super tall towers has sparked a debate about the future of Manhattan and the changing character of its neighborhoods. Critics argue that these towers are symbols of inequality, standing as gleaming monuments to the wealthiest residents in a city that is increasingly unaffordable for many. Yet others argue that these buildings represent the city's ability to reinvent itself, constantly adapting to the needs of a changing world. The development of Billionaires Row exemplifies both the opportunity and the challenge presented by the city's modern skyline. How do you build for the future without erasing the past? While the towers of Billionaires Row dominate Midtown, another part of Manhattan has been experiencing its own transformation, the Lower West Side. Hudson Yards, once a district of rail yards and industrial buildings, has emerged as a new neighborhood within the skyline. With the opening of the vessel in 2019, a stunning spiral staircase and observation deck, and the development of high-rise office buildings, residential complexes, and retail centers, Hudson Yards represents the future of Manhattan's skyline. It's a symbol of urban innovation, combining cutting-edge design with a focus on public spaces and green building practices. It's a district that not only looks to the future, but also reimagines the relationship between architecture and urban living. At the same time, the city has been increasingly focused on sustainability, energy efficiency, and environmental impact. As the world grapples with the consequences of climate change, New York is seeking to transform its skyline in ways that reduce its environmental footprint. Newer buildings are designed with energy-efficient technologies, green roofs, and public spaces that help combat urban heat islands. The commitment to sustainability is particularly evident in newer developments like the One World Trade Center, which not only serves as a symbol of the city's resilience, but also features sustainable design practices. This building incorporates energy-efficient systems, environmentally friendly materials, and a design that reduces its carbon footprint while providing a space for businesses to thrive. Perhaps one of the most significant changes to the Manhattan skyline has been the resurgence of the financial district and the World Trade Center site, a story that's particularly poignant given the events of 9/11. The construction of One World Trade Center, which stands as the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, not only altered the skyline, but symbolized the city's recovery. Standing 1,776 feet tall, One World Trade Center is not just an architectural marvel, but also a statement of defiance and resilience. It embodies the spirit of New York City, the city that never gives up. The surrounding World Trade Center complex is a mixed-use development that includes office space, retail outlets, the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and the Oculus Transportation Hub, connecting Lower Manhattan with the rest of the city. The transformation of Ground Zero is not just a physical reconstruction, but also a way for New York to reclaim its position on the global stage. However, the most important feature of the modern Manhattan skyline may be the constant evolution and adaptation of the city. While the skyline may have reached incredible heights, New York has always been a city that thrives on reinvention. The skyline continues to evolve with new buildings, new purposes, and new technologies shaping its future. The concept of a city that never sleeps is more than just a motto. It's a defining characteristic of Manhattan. The skyline reflects this relentless energy and ambition, always pushing higher and further, even as it preserves its history and honors the past. This balance of progress and preservation is crucial to understanding the modern Manhattan skyline. The juxtaposition of old and new, of historic structures like the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building standing side by side with new skyscrapers, is one of the defining features of New York City. It is this ability to honor the past while moving toward the future that sets the Manhattan skyline apart from others around the world. The city's architecture has become not just a reflection of its changing economy, but a living, breathing testament to the city's ever-expanding ambitions. Manhattan's skyline continues to rise higher, not just in physical stature, but also in cultural, artistic, and economic significance. Each new building added to the skyline is more than just an addition to the city's skyline. It is a piece of history, a reflection of the city's ambitions, and a symbol of what New York represents to the world. Today, as the skyline of Manhattan continues to stretch ever higher, there is no sign that the city's vertical growth will slow down anytime soon. Manhattan's skyline is alive, constantly evolving, and serving as a reminder that New York City will always continue to reinvent itself. Its architecture tells the story of the city's spirit, fearless, creative, and always reaching for the sky. From super tall residential towers in Billionaire's Row to the ambitious plans for a fully sustainable and environmentally friendly future, the Manhattan skyline is a dynamic force that will continue to shape the city for generations to come. As we look to the future of Manhattan's skyline, the most exciting aspect is the way it adapts to the changing needs of the city. From the rapid development of new neighborhoods like Hudson Yards to the ongoing construction of new luxury residences and office buildings, it is clear that the skyline will continue to transform as the city grows and evolves. The skyline of New York is a work in progress, and with each new building, it tells a new chapter of the story of the city. But Manhattan's skyline is not just about the buildings themselves. It's also about the energy they bring to the city and the people who inhabit them. It is about the connections that are made in those spaces, the meetings, the ideas, the creativity, and the ambition. The Skyline is a reflection of New York's constant drive to push forward, to innovate, and to lead the world in business, culture, and architecture. The modern Manhattan skyline is more than just a collection of buildings. It is a living, breathing symbol of a city that never stops moving, growing, or reaching for the stars. As the skyline continues to grow, it will undoubtedly encounter new challenges. Technological advancements, environmental considerations, and changes in the global economy will continue to shape the city's development. But what remains unchanged is the spirit of New York City, a spirit that will continue to drive the evolution of the skyline for generations to come. In the end, the modern Manhattan skyline is more than just a collection of buildings. It is a symbol of the city's resilience, ambition, and unyielding drive to move forward. The skyline represents the dreams of millions of people who call New York City home, and it will continue to shape the future of the city for years to come. And there you have it, the incredible transformation of Manhattan from humble beginnings to the towering masterpiece we see today. It's amazing to think about how far the city has come, isn't it? If you enjoyed this journey through time, and to get to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another dive into history. Drop a comment below and let me know what part of Manhattan's past you'd love to learn more about next. See you in the next video.